Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another video. Today's video is going to be about patch 7.30C, and unfortunately for me, this was released literally the same day that I made my carry tier list. I had all the tier lists done. I didn't have the videos made, but I had them done. And I was going to release them all this next week, and now this patch came out. So that's bad for me, but probably good for all of us because it's kind of nerfing all the things that were really strong a little bit here. So that's good. It's changing the game a little bit, and this is probably going to be the last patch before TI. Maybe the last patch for a few months here, even after TI, because, after TI, they usually just wait around a little bit and don't do much. So this patch will probably be around for a while, and they do have some big changes in here. So I'm just going to go over everything. I'm going to skip some of the things that aren't that big of a deal or just briefly touch on them, but I'll give you kind of an easy bite-sized rundown of everything in here. So let's just jump into it. General changes. They added Dawnbreaker to Captain's Mode, not a big deal for us. This is the biggest change of the patch potentially. Stacked neutral creeps gold and XP bounty reduced by 15%. Stacker gold bonus unaffected. This means that the supports that get the extra gold when they stack, it's not reducing that gold, so the supports still get the same amount of gold. The actual hero that farms the stack gets less gold. So this overall means that Luna, Gyro, Sven, Medusa, all of those heroes that like to farm stacks are now worse because they're getting less gold. Even Clinkz would farm stacks in this last patch. So they're all worse because they're getting 15% less gold from those stacks. Heroes like Lifestealer, heroes like PA or AM or even Slark or Ursa, any carry that doesn't like to farm stacks or doesn't like to farm stacks until they get a lot of levels in Battle Fury or something like that, now they're just better because a lot of stacks would happen early in the game before any of these heroes get a lot of damage or farming items like Battle Fury or anything like that. So any of these heroes that don't like to farm stacks are just now going to be better. So this could just change the entire meta. It could change the entire carry meta, or 15% might not be enough to actually change anything. It just depends. We'll have to see how this shakes out in the future with the meta and everything like that. So this could be the biggest change of the patch. Next, the changes are just Ancient Black Dragon and Thunderhide nerfs. This is general nerfs to the Helm of the Overlord and Beastmaster and Lycan, which were much needed. Basically just increased mana cost for those creeps. Then we're going to go to item changes. Echo Saber is now nerfed with the mana and the strength. Basically, this is just a nerf to Echo Saber. Echo Saber has been good for a long time. This is actually probably a really big nerf to Slark and other people that buy this, or other heroes that buy this all the time. Slark was slightly nerfed, but this is probably even a bigger nerf to Slark than the other changes. So Echo Saber just generally nerfed, just not as good now, which was probably needed. MKB was buffed because MKB was kind of in the dumpster. It was good for a very, very long time, and they finally kind of made it not really relevant. Now it might be back. It's kind of a fine line with this. If it's a very efficient late game damage item, it's going to be picked up a lot. If it's not, it's not. It's kind of like either or kind of thing. So giving it 10 extra attack speed may bring it back to relevance. We'll just have to see. Silver Edge was pretty good. They just kind of increased the cooldown, much needed. Status resistance was reduced for SNY and Kayan Sanj, which are probably needed. They already reduced Sanj's overall, lone status resistance, so this was probably needed. We'll see if it's enough to make it irrelevant. It's still one of the only ways to get status resistance, so it's probably still going to mean these items are picked up. It's just not as good as it was. These changes are not as big like in here. This is just a cost increased, not that big, but still a little bit. Cost reduced, not that big. Just recipe reduced, so it's the same cost as before. And then recipe reduced, so the cost is a little bit less because this item was kind of trash. And then these items, Helm of the Dominator and Overlord, are nerfed. The cost for this is increased a little bit. And then the cost is unchanged here, but all of the stats are nerfed by just a little bit. So that's just another nerf to Beastmaster and Lycan, kind of two of the heroes of the patch. So kind of much needed. This was pretty overpowered. We'll see if it changes much. These are small nerfs. Probably just making the numbers more even, and so that the heroes are still good, but they're not insanely overpowered. So those are probably much needed nerfs. Now, neutral items I'm not going to spend much time on. Just all of these were nerfed, basically. They were just really good, so they're all getting nerfs. Just basically slight stat nerfs. Not a huge deal. Hero changes, I'm going to go through pretty much most of the hero changes, but we're going to skip some of the ones or just briefly go over ones that are not a big deal. This one, not a huge deal. This one's it's 20 talent. That's a support. Alchemist is kind of bordering on a potential support. So these changes, especially the Chemical Rage, I mean, it's not the biggest of deal that the mana cost was changed here, but as a support, this hero is kind of the thing. And then if this hero ever becomes a core again, this will be significant. So these aren't really support things, but that's where this hero seems to be viable right now, and then if this ever becomes a core again, these will be helpful for it, because I don't know if you know, but the level 10 talent allows this hero's stun to be like insane AoE, just like crazy. So anyway, that's Alchemist. I don't think these changes are enough to bring him back, but we'll see what happens if this is an Alchemist patch or not. AA, really good 2 patches ago. Last patch not as good, so they're just kind of increasing some of the numbers on this hero. Probably not enough to make it more relevant than it was, but a little bit better. Arc Warden, they kind of weird changes here, but I don't think this is enough to make it better. They're reducing the strength, but then obviously increasing agility, so I don't know. It's not the biggest of deal, I don't think. They keep kind of messing with Spark Wraith and like Agnum's Scepter or Shard or whatever. They keep just messing with weird things about this hero, but I don't think it's enough to make it relevant. Bane was pretty much the 5 position of the patch. Bane and Silencer were the 2 5 positions. They slightly nerfed. These are practically irrelevant, but small nerfs. And then more small nerfs, but Bane is still probably OP, probably one of the best 5 positions. The next big one, and probably one of the bigger nerfs, is Batrider, but even though it's a nerf, overall, I think Batrider's still going to be crazy. This hero, when I went to make the tier list, I put this as S and the lone S tier hero, I think, for mid, because it had like an 80% win rate at the time when I checked Dota 2 Pro Tracker. It was insane. This hero was just crazy. So basically, they made the day vision better, because this was what it was before. They increased it a little bit here, but then with Firefly, they nerfed it overall. The bonus vision was nerfed overall, but now it's like, it's a nerf, but normally without Firefly, it's a little bit of a buff. So it's kind of evens out a little bit. It's maybe worse, but not like that much worse. It just depends. Cooldown obviously increased with Firefly as well, so early on. So it's just not as good early on. And then Sticky Napalm, the duration was reduced or decreased. So basically, it's like harder to keep stacks up, which is important. And then this DPS was decreased a little bit. It wasn't the biggest deal, but it did do a lot more DPS than what you would think. So this hero probably is still busted, but just not as good in certain ways. But then this day vision increase is kind of significant. So we'll see how that shakes out. I still think it's probably going to be OP. It's just not going to have like a ridiculous win rate. But Batrider's still probably an amazing hero right now. Next big one is Beastmaster. Damage reduced by 2, cooldown basically from 90, 80, 70 to 100, 80, 60. So at the end, it's, less of a cooldown. There's only 60 seconds, but in the beginning of the game, it's a higher cooldown, because this hero's kind of a beginning game hero, like early game. You rush all of your items and you just kind of snowball the game. You take all the towers, all those kinds of things. So kind of a decent change here. And then overall, the talents are just switched around or nerfed. Basically, they kind of shifted all of the really important things to later in the game. So he's actually better later now in some ways, because, well, not better necessarily, but like this is a little bit better. But like the 250 health for his controlled units is now a 20 talent, and the Primal Roar cooldown is now a 25 talent. So these things aren't necessarily better, but they're just kind of like moved up a little bit. But this is a little bit better here. So overall, the hero's a little bit worse. The hero's worse early, those kinds of things. But later in the game, honestly, you're going to have a 30-second Primal Roar. That's going to kind of be crazy. But it's still just, because it's such an early game hero, it's a little bit nerfed there, which was much needed. Bloodseeker, agility gain reduced. Fixed level, 15 talent, bonus rupture damage not applying to target that was already ruptured. And then 10 talent. 10% Blood Rage spell amp reduced to 8. This hero was like a pretty good off lane. It was getting picked a lot in off lane. I don't know if this is enough to stop this hero from getting picked. We'll have to see. I think what will be more relevant is basically like who are the other meta heroes, and like who are the carries, and whether stacking is like the biggest of deal or those kinds of things. So this hero was getting picked a lot more, but we'll see if that's still relevant and if this is enough to change. I don't think it's that big of changes, but so the changes aren't the biggest of deal, but I think just like whether or not the meta changes, we'll see whether this hero's picked more. Bounty Hunter was really, really good, so they just kind of nerfed the damage on Janata, because once you got that Ags and like all that kind of stuff, it was just like crazy. Like you were doing so much damage and getting so much gold. I think this hero's still good, but just not as crazy, just not able to blow up supports in like 2 hits. Brewmaster, slightly buffed. Not the biggest of deal, but slight buffs. Centaur, slight buffs, better radius, but not the biggest of deal again. But maybe this hero will be more relevant in this patch, because maybe he'll be good against some of the new meta carries and those kinds of things. We'll have to see. Chaos Knight, just more move speed, more proc chance, armor reduction increased. buffs to this hero. I think this hero did need buffs. This hero has a lot of base move speed now, and it has a stun, so it could be a support. I know I've seen other people say that this hero could potentially be a support because it's kind of played less like a carry now and more like offlane and other things like that, which I disagree with. But maybe even this could make it more of a carry now. We'll just have to see what happens with this hero. But some good buffs overall. I think it needed that. Chen, armor aura reduced, health regen aura increased, so they're just kind of changing the numbers here. And then the 10 talent changed. I don't think this is going to be a big deal. It's either a Chen patch or it's not. I don't think that those buffs or nerfs are really that big of a deal. Now, Clinkz. They nerfed the damage numbers on Clinkz. I don't know if this is enough to make Clinkz irrelevant, but these are like starting numbers. So basically agility gain reduced, attack range reduced, cooldown increased, added a cast point so it's not instant, and then mana cost is increased. The archer duration was reduced, so you can't have as many archers out now. And then the overall health that you get was also reduced. But the Burning Army was increased, so it's like incentivizing Burning Army despite all these things being reduced. So they basically just nerfed the hero and all of the numbers, which I think were much needed. We'll see if this hero is now crap. If he had like 2 weeks of his time and now he's just terrible. But this was much needed. It just might be a little bit of overkill. I don't know. This is a big nerf. He is not going to have nearly as much health. This ability is good, but not as good. He can't get nearly as many archers with his shard now. He's just a worse hero overall. Not as much range, which is really important for the hero. So we'll see if this kills the hero, but it was really overpowered. So I'm not sure if it's dead, but it's definitely not as good. CM, slight buff, I think, especially with the mana cost reduced and the fact that she obviously has a mana ability. This hero could be a very, very good support in the near future. Darkseer, just some nerfs. I think it was pretty good last patch, or like 2 patches ago. Not as good last patch, but still pretty good. And now they're just nerfing it a little bit more. Obviously, these things are a little bit of a change to buffs, but those are just talents. I don't think it's the biggest of a deal. But later game could be a little bit better. Dazzle, base attack range increase, so this allows you to get that Q stack, because I thought, and some other people thought, Dazzle might be a really good support, but he hasn't been as good. So now he can, keep you, because of his attack range, he can keep that Q on you a lot longer, and, you'll be slowed a lot more. So that's the most significant thing, I think. DP, just slight buffs, and I think DP could honestly be an amazing mid now. Like, she has the chance to be good. It just depends on the patch and what heroes are good, but like DP with these buffs could actually be pretty good now. We'll just have to see. I have a feeling she may be one of the heroes of the patch for mid. We'll just have to see. Disruptor, small changes, honestly not a big deal, 25 talents. Dragon Knight was in the dumpster. They absolutely destroyed this hero. It was one of the worst heroes in the game this last patch after the big nerfs. So they're just kind of buffing it, giving back some of its magic resistance, cooldown reduced, and all those kinds of things. I don't know if this is enough to be relevant, but it's not like to like make the hero good again, but it's not going to be the absolute crap pick that like if you get a DK on your team, you're just like auto losing the game. Drow Ranger, this is a slight buff that might make the hero actually good because multi-shot applies the bonus damage component of Frost Arrows. It's almost like something that you thought probably should have happened already, but it just didn't, so now it might be good. Earth Shaker, slight buffs to like cast point and stuff, which is always good for this hero. We'll see if that makes him relevant. Small buffs, but good. Ember, small buffs, but pretty good. Maybe he'll come back. He was good for such a long time that they nerfed him constantly, and now he's just not as good as the other spirit heroes. So this probably isn't enough to bring him back, but he could be good again. Mana cost reduced, and Ench wasn't that great. Little buffs there. Buffs to Grimstroke. These are obviously late game talents, but these are pretty good, so you want to like get insta-killed by late game Grimstroke. Have fun here. Gyro, not a big deal. Hoodwink. This is actually a big deal because this slow wasn't a huge like thing, but now it's increased the duration, and it like feels really, really bad because it's not a stun, but it like feels like you can't move at all. So that's pretty important, but then late game does a little bit less damage. So just a buff to support. Huskar. Later game talents, a little bit better here for 25, but the regen reduced, so I don't know that's as big of a deal. Jakiro, a buff and a nerf, and then a slight buff. I don't think that's that much of a change. I mean, its early game tankiness is really important, so this is actually not very good for the hero, but in any case, I don't think that's huge. Keeper of the Light was one of the really, really good heroes for this patch, both in support and even played mid, but they just basically made Illuminate worse overall, and then the bonus move speed, they decreased that, because this hero would like fly around the map at like insane move speed. You could never catch him, so Basically just making this worse and the move speed worse, just nerfs the hero overall. But that magic damage, that burst damage, that Dagon build from mid, that wasn't nerfed at all. So we'll see if that's still enough to make this hero good. It just farms not maybe as quickly. We'll see if this is enough to like make it not farm full waves easily, but I think it still will farm waves and everything. It's just not as like crazy in the game, like doing insane damage and stuff like that, and it's not as hard to catch. Lifestealer, agility increased, which is good. Lifestealer has kind of been rising, and I feel like Lifestealer's getting better. So now that they buffed it a little bit here, and the fact that the stack change was implemented, this hero could be one of the best heroes of the patch from carry. We'll have to see. Lina, the cooldown is increased for Light Strike Array, which is bad for support, and even core, because you usually leave this like level 1 pretty late into the game. Laguna Blade also reduces mana cost, which is pretty significant, and then the attack range was reduced. So this hero is kind of nerfed, a little bit of buff to the Shard, but pretty much nerfed overall. This hero wasn't amazing, but it was still pretty good, so I don't think this hero is going to be as good now. Luna, basically nerfed with the Shard launches only 1 attack instead of 2, even though the range is like bigger, but it's just an overall nerf to this. Even though they buffed the Eclipse, it might be better for spell build Luna, but Luna's just not as good now overall because of the stack change, and now because of this Shard build is not nearly as good. So Luna could be kind of dead now. Not completely dead, still decent, but not great. Lycan, overall, just complete nerfs to everything, which is very significant, very good. Lycan was even maybe better than Beastmaster, so Lycan was really, really good. Just overall nerfs that needed to happen with the damage and health regen and the wolves summon damage and all these talents and everything that made this hero really, really good. It's all just scaled back, which is much needed. Mirana, slight increases to attack speed, cooldown reduction, change, and all these things, but these are later in the game. I think Mirana's still kind of the same hero, not the biggest of deals. Monkey King was on the rise, was starting to be really, really good. So they changed the early damage crit for this Boundless Strike, which you usually left level 1, and they just changed the Tree Dance cooldown early as well to make it not as good. So this could just make the hero a little bit more balanced. He was on the rise as one of the really good heroes of the patch, so we'll see. This probably just makes him a little bit more balanced. Naga, strength reduced, and Riptide and stuff changed. This is not the biggest deal. I think Naga's generally the same. This makes Nature's Prophet a little bit better, but not that big of a deal. Night Stalker's been really, really good this past patch, so slight reductions here, but still not enough to, I think, make him worse. He's still really good. Omni Knight, the fact that Heavenly Grace can now be dispelled may kill this hero. He also has, like, he costs more mana here. His slow is kind of irrelevant. It's probably his worst ability. And then Heavenly Grace cooldown to level 20 from -3 to -2. This is basically this dispellable part of this ability for Heavenly Grace may kill the hero. This hero was one of the best 5 positions, one of the best supports in the game because of this ability, and now that it can be dispelled, it may be trash. He may never be picked up again, which is sad because Omni Knight never saw play really. Now he was getting play. It was very annoying. It is annoying when he's good, but now he might just be dead. We'll have to see if that's enough, but he could be dead. Pango, really, really good. Last patch, probably one of the better heroes, and because they've kind of changed how the slow works and everything, this Shield Crash ability, people would get this early on and just spam it in lane. Be very annoying in lane, and so now they just kind of scaled back the numbers here and increased the mana cost so you can't spam it as much. Cooldown also increased, just nerfing the hero overall. It was really good this past patch, so I don't think that'll make it irrelevant. We'll have to see, but at least nerfs it in some ways so the Shield Crash isn't as good, because it felt like this ability used to be his worst ability, and now it's like really one of his best abilities. So PA, maybe it was kind of a dumpstered hero. It was terrible last patch. Win rate was absolutely awful, but now more regen in lane, which is really good for laning, and now the blur evasion increased to 50% at the end, the last level, which is crazy. Even the first level's 20%, which is really good. So this hero may be really good now, especially with the stack change, but MKB is better, so MKB does counter this hero, so we'll have to just see how it shakes out. But Phantom Assassin could be pretty good. PL, they just kind of nerfed the Lance cooldown, which is for the Lance build with the way that he's being played now. Puck, slight buff, but not relevant because they removed the stun. He's still probably not going to be good. Pugna, Ag Scepter heal increased. This hero wasn't as good, so increasing that is pretty good for core Pugna. Rubik, mana regen increased, attack damage reduction here. From this to this, so slight increase, and damage reduction per bounce reduced, so just kind of better things for Rubik, but then also this one not as good. I don't know, it just depends. I don't think it's really relevant. Rubik's kind of at the same spot. Sand King overall nerfs here Cooldown increased and cast range decreased. So this obviously is one of his best abilities. It's kind of feels bad. He was very good last patch, so it kind of makes sense. But they also fixed this working on illusion, so he is like kind of in some ways better against illusion heroes, I guess you could say, but not that much. It's just kind of like almost like fixed it. But this is a nerf to the hero that makes him feel worse. We'll see if it's relevant enough to make him not picked as much. Shadow Demon, cooldown increased and mana cost rescaled for Shadow Poison. So you basically can't spam this as much early, and the cooldown for disruption is just increased. So basically the hero has been pretty good this past patch and just small nerfs to it. Shadow Fiend, they really want to make this right-click Shadow Fiend a thing. They like, get out of here spell build, let's make this critical damage insane. This hero does a ton of damage. And with the updates and all the meta changes that might happen, this hero could be maybe one of the best mids. We'll have to see how it shakes out. But this could be kind of a crazy amount of damage that this hero gets with his shard. We'll just have to see how it works. But that's another pretty big buff to SF, and he was already kind of on the rise. Shadow Shaman, health regen increased, which is always good for a trading hero early because he has insane right click. So we'll see if this is relevant. And then attack, like he's getting buffs. I think this hero was already pretty decent, and now he's getting a little bit of buffs. Not that big of a buffs, but not huge buffs, but buffs nonetheless. Silencer, one of the best supports of the patch. This is better actually for support Silencer now because the early level 1 Glaives of Wisdom that you took is actually better. So, you know, later game not as good, but support, which was basically the best 5 position along with Bane, is better. So that's actually a buff to Silencer. Silencer, probably the best 5 position in the patch, one of the best heroes in the patch. Slardar, cooldown reduced, damage increased, not super relevant, but good. Slark, attack speed reduced, and then level 25 talent reduced. These are nerfs, but not the biggest of nerfs. I think the Echo Saber nerf is a bigger nerf than this. Slark, I think, is still really, really good. Snapfire, nerfed a lot in the recent patches, so this just making her better at trading. And then this, I think, just makes the damage come out faster. The Mortimer Kisses is just a little bit faster. It does all the same damage and does all the same stuff, same amount of shots or whatever, you know, globs, but just lower amount of time, so it happens a little bit quicker, which I think makes the ability a little better. Sven, nerfed overall, base attack time slightly increased, damage rescaled, so early on the damage isn't as insane, and then the duration for God Strength a little bit lower, so that you have to actually, you know, be a little bit more picky about when you use it and use it correctly and all that kind of stuff. So just overall nerfs to Sven. It honestly, I don't know if it'll be the biggest thing. We'll have to see about that. Like I said, that stacking change is the biggest one. Terrorblade was absolute crap this last patch, so just a small buff to him. Timbersaw, also terrible this last patch for whatever reason. Base damage increased by 1. Bonus damage per tree cut increased. All small buffs and these kinds of things here as well. Tiny, strength increased. I think Tiny was relatively decent. Not the best, but okay. So just buffing this hero. This hero might be pretty good now. Not the biggest of buffs, but could be pretty good. Tusk was pretty bad recently for whatever reason. I thought he was pretty good in general, like in lower MMR, but in higher MMR he just wasn't very good, so they reduced the cooldown on this. Critical damage increased, maybe to make him more of a core or something like that. And then 25 talent also changed as well, so small buffs to Tusk. Underlord, buffs to Fiend's Gate, which is the Ags, I believe, and then talent changes. Doesn't change the hero much, but just a little better. Undying now, base mana regen and better decay level 10. This hero is actually starting to be played as a core, and now I think it's even better as a core, potentially. So look out for Undying core being a real thing now that it has even more mana regen and more damage. Like, this hero might be legit now. Ursa level 25 talent buff, but not a big deal. Venge, nerfed overall, agility gain reduced, and now puts an HP bar over her Ag Scepter Illusion, so you can actually tell that she has Ags and stuff. And the speed reduced. So just nerfs to Venge. We'll see if that's enough to kill the hero, but the hero's overall been really good. Veno nerfs, but not enough. This hero does the same thing as before, not a big deal. Viper wasn't really in a bad spot. He just wasn't as OP maybe as before, and now they're giving him extra agility and extra magic resistance decrease per stack. So watch out for Viper mid, watch out for Viper core coming to be a huge thing and being super annoying this patch. Void Spirit, overall nerfs. This hero is probably one of the best mids in the patch right now, so just making his talents early on a little bit worse for him, just so he's not as good, but still a pretty good hero. Warlock, now Upheaval has 35-second cooldown, so it's actually a real ability that's kind of good to use, so we'll see if that makes him relevant. Weaver, more health regen and lower mana cost. So this hero is kind of on the rise. Maybe this will make Weaver a better carry finally, now that stacks. He's another one that benefits from the stack change as well, because he doesn't really like to farm stacks early on. So Weaver could be one of the carries of the patch. We'll have to see. Witch Doctor was in an absolutely terrible place. I like him for lower MMR pubs, but in higher MMR pubs, he was just absolutely garbage. So now damage is increased, mana cost reduced to something reasonable, and cooldown reduced to something reasonable as well. So this hero could be a really, really good support. We'll just have to see how it works out. I think it's really good for lower MMR pubs, so you should probably pick Witch Doctor if you're in a low MMR pub. Wraith King, they kind of dumpstered him with some of the changes, some of the nerfs, because he's been good for a little while, but now they're increasing the damage for his Wraith Fire Blast and the impact damage as well later on. So I think, like, this hero you could max this blast, or like use this blast in some weird way. I don't know if it's enough to make the hero relevant, but making, this blast do more damage is just better for the hero overall, and if he ever becomes relevant again, that'll be significant changes for him. Now, Zeus, the last change is that you can target the ground, and it'll target like a non-hero enemy unit in range when you target the ground. And this basically means you can stack, or you can like hit creeps from out of range, from out of vision, from in fog. You can like stack the small camp if you're mid, those kinds of things. So it's just like a quality of life thing for Zeus. I don't think it changes a lot, but it just makes the hero a little bit better. So those are all of the changes for the gameplay update 7.30C. Like I said, this one could be the biggest change right here, the stack change. And then we have some item changes that are pretty significant. We have the Helm of the Overlord nerfed. We have Beastmaster and Lycan and all those things nerfed. We have just a lot, like Clinkz maybe dumpstered. So just some of the really good heroes changed and dumpstered, and maybe a change in who is going to be picked as carry going forward. So that is my patch analysis. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope that was informative for you and quick enough for you. As always, if you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. Join the Discord if you haven't already. That's where I'm taking replay review requests from now on. If you want coaching, just visit my Patreon. All the links are below for Patreon and Discord and everything like that. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.